I learned all about Ansel Keys and the original study that kind of led to cholesterol being demonized. And I love lasagna, and I slipped, whatever. I had some lasagna. Not to get into details, but you wouldn't want to be around me within 12 hours after eating that. And I'm passing wind again. I actually haven't done that in a long time. I have two boys. They are big meat eaters. They are super healthy. To see them, I'm like, God, I'm doing you a favor by learning from my mistakes, because they're thriving. I think the most important thing is seek the truth. I urge people not only to, explore meat and stuff, but learn the history of how we got to where we are. All people are trying to do is be healthy, and we should have a pretty clear path to that information. Keep it up. Do what works for you. And also my hair started coming back, which is great because I didn't really like being bald.
So Guy is with us today. He is our guest. Guy, I'll let you get started here. So let's just kind of get going here. Tell us a little bit about where you are, your background, and then we'll talk about your success story. So thank you for doing this, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. The main points is that I'm getting well into my 50s, and as I was entering my 50s, pretty much like most people, gained a few pounds every year. Thought I was eating the correct food, worked out a lot always. But then on my 50th first birthday, literally on my birthday, I had what they call the widowmaker heart attack, which is ended up having 100% blockage in my left anterior descending artery, which is a very bad thing. So, that was kind of like the single biggest event, obviously, that got me interested in nutrition. Kind of interesting before that. I have a degree in microbiology. I love science. I love biochemistry. So it's kind of a hobby of mine, even though I'm more into software engineering now. But when that happened to me, and luckily I recovered with very little damage to my heart, which is kind of amazing in itself. But I think collateral circulation had a lot to do with that. But after that, I just started researching nutrition, to make sure that never happened to me again. And also something that kind of developed somewhat after that was alopecia areata, which is basically you start losing your hair in patches, and it can progress to get really bad. And mine did. I recall having little quarter-sized patches on my face, my beard, whatever, would show up. They go away. It was never too bad over the years, but it at one point it just started taking hold of me, and I literally lost all the hair on my head. In conjunction with researching, why did I have a heart attack? I'm like, why am I losing my hair? And more, I started seeing stuff about elimination diets. And I know that meat, for example, is kind of like the ultimate elimination diet in many sense. If you're reacting to various plants or gluten or whatever it is, it's really hard to pinpoint what the problem is, and it may not even be food, but it most likely is what it looks like. So I kind of started changing my diet, and I found your book, an excellent book. Read many other things, and it all made sense. I tried to go to the biochemistry level when I would read stuff to try to get a little bit more, because I know that studies are very iffy. I learned all about Ansel Keys and the original study that kind of led to, cholesterol being demonized. And that was an amazing story. I never knew that, but I saw more and more things like that, like Timothy Noakes, the professor that got attacked. I've seen a lot of people that got attacked for their viewpoints, including yourself, actually. And so I think it's been a good journey to get the right information, and also my hair started coming back, which is great because I didn't really like being bald.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. But first of all, so you're literally your 50th birthday, you have a heart attack. Is that what I heard?
Yeah,
exactly.
It was 51st, I think, actually, if I get, 2016. I was grilling salmon. I actually had a couple of events that were, I don't even know if they might have been pre-heart attacks, if that even makes sense, but I was aware of the fact that, I needed to get a stress test and check some stuff out. And it really hit hard at that point.
So you're out there on in your backyard on your birthday, I guess, grilling out some salmon, which is, the heart healthy stuff. Don't eat that awful red meat. If you're going to have meat, make sure it's some salmon or some lean meat. And you have, so, I mean, what were the symptoms? I mean, did you get nauseous? Did you start having chest pain? Did you pass out? How did that, play out?
Yeah, the symptom is weird to explain it because I had different things happen. Like I think is a feeling of you just know something's very wrong. It was painful, but it wasn't as painful as the full-on heart attack hit later that night. But it was, you just stop what you're doing and it just feels wrong. It is painful, but it's just the scariest feeling. I didn't have like pain going through my arm. There's a lot of the things that people talk about. I didn't get that, but I knew something was really wrong big time. And all I wanted to do was sit quietly. I actually had some nitroglycerin tablets from the cardiologist that I had just seen because we were actually getting ready to schedule me for a stress echo. And he said, if you take one of those, you still feel something, take another one. I guess you can go up to 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And if it's still like that, get into the hospital. That's what I did.
So you had nitroglycerin in your possession. So it's presumably you described to the cardiologist you were having some sort of chest symptoms, and they gave it to you as a preventive for angina, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And what had your diet and lifestyle been prior to this? When you're in your 40s and stuff like that, where you probably weren't eating a carnivore diet. I imagine you're probably eating, I don't know, maybe a standard American diet. What was going on back then?
Yeah, the funny thing is I was already like thinking, I would really like to not trend to gaining more weight every year, which I was doing. So I was looking into stuff, and a typical meal at that point would have been maybe 4 eggs, but only 1 yolk. So I would take the yolk out. Mm-hmm. Oatmeal was a big thing. I didn't put sugar. I was kind of already hip on not eating too much sugar. Mm-hmm. One thing I think that might have really did me in was I did love making my own tacos, and I would fry the tortillas in like corn oil. Mm-hmm. And I did that often. So I'm heating oil, saturating, my tortillas in oil pretty often is like a favorite dish of mine. So yeah, I was not eating much red meat. I was definitely eating grains mm-hmm. and actually kind of a sort of a low fat for the most part diet.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're making an effort to limit cholesterol and saturated fat exposure. Just 1 egg yolk but using oil. I mean, because we hear from places like Harvard University that we should replace saturated fats with quote unquote heart healthy vegetable oils and so on and so forth. Did you ever? I mean, were you running high cholesterol? What was your cholesterol levels like prior to heart attack? Did you ever assess that?
Yeah, I did like usually at least a yearly mm-hmm. assessment, and it was always, I would get the, that's too high. Mm-hmm. The LDL is too high, the total's too high. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really aware of, triglycerides to HDL ratio at that point. That mm-hmm. came later. So I was thinking, okay, yeah, my cholesterol's too high. I hadn't started taking statins though. Okay. I was kind of surprised they didn't push that on me more at that point.
Okay. Yeah. And some people would say, well, if they would have, maybe you wouldn't have had a heart attack perhaps. So you have elevated cholesterol. You don't know what your triglycerides are. You have made an attempt to eat heart healthy, low fat, or somewhat anyway. And you have this, blood pressure was fine. You said you were gaining weight. So you were, I don't know what you weigh now, but where were you at back then weight wise?
Probably in the 230s. Mm-hmm.
And how tall are you?
Just under 5'10".
5'10", and it was all muscle, 100% muscle, or no?
Yeah, I do have a kind of a muscular build, especially mm-hmm. my legs. So there's some decent weight coming from that, but it was obvious that my belly was expanding. I have to admit I'm fond of beer. That's been one challenge. Yeah. Always for me to kind of to drop that too.
So you had a beer belly. That's perfect, right? You had a beer belly. Yeah. and honestly, I don't mean light of this, but that is something that is a very, very significant risk factor for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, dementia, erectile dysfunction, everything when you have this big, central adiposity. And so it's a problem. And that's probably, if you look at a cumulative, like where does the heart disease risk come from? Well, it's everything that's making you have that big belly, and whether it's, beer or refined grains or too many calories or whatever it might be, or too much mass, as some people would like to say if they don't like to talk about calories. So you get in this situation, you have a heart attack. What do they do? What do they tell you?
It was the craziest night. I mean, you want to hear that night or
Sure.
kind of
Tell us about
after?
the night. Yeah. Because hopefully all of us will only hear about it and never have to experience it.
Yeah, they actually did a couple of news stories on me too. It was kind of interesting, but I was on the couch, like not wanting to move. My wife's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think this is good." And I happen to have, I was in a band, and my drummer had I guess it's his girlfriend, was kind of a head and ER nurse in a hospital in San Diego. I'm in Oceanside, which is a little bit of a drive, but I'm like, I'm going to go there because, I called her and like, yeah, come in, we'll set you up. So at that point, I was feeling okay again. So drove down like a 45-minute drive, got checked in. They set me all up, and everything was cool. And they said, we're gonna admit you into a room, and in the morning we'll give you a stress test. I'm like, cool, great. So it was getting late. My wife went home. We thought everything was fine. And then I remember sitting in bed, as watching actually Jimmy Fallon's monologue. So I knew it was just before midnight. And then that's when the actual heart attack hit with 100%. I mean, it was different than what I felt before. It was such a painful and uneasy feeling. You just squirm, and you think, oh, I'm dying. I mean, how can my heart hurt this bad and I'm not dying? And they came in and they confirmed that I indeed was in a heart attack. And then the funny thing is, I mean, they gave me some more nitro and actually passed out because my blood pressure tanked right when they did. Of course, I thought I was dying at that moment too. But I came back, and it took the longest time. It actually took the cardiologist over 3 hours to get to the hospital. And I don't know why. I won't get into that because luckily I'm okay. But looking in retrospect, I think that's way too much time to be, in 100% heart attack mode. But
I mean, the ER was managed. I mean, you were in the ER, right? And they were giving you morphine and giving you medications, I suppose, correct? Is that fair to say?
Actually, I wasn't in the ER anymore. I was in the room because I was waiting for the stress test in the morning. So I never got moved into that room until I got actually taken to the cath lab.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, long story short, I got into the cath lab about 3.5 hours after it hit. And it was so scary because I heard the surgeon talking to my wife, we might have to open him up. And I'm thinking, great. But then again, at that point, whatever it takes. But luckily they ended up putting, they went through my wrist and they went all the way up my arm with the cath and a stent. They're going to put stents in, and they got to my chest. It hurt so bad. I couldn't believe I wasn't passing out, but they managed to put 2 stents in and open it up. A little after that, I started getting relief. And then they put me into the ICU, and I remember my heart was kind of feeling crazy that whole night, as far as like not beating correctly, but it wasn't hurting. And they checked on me, and I guess I spent another night or 2 in the hospital, and then I just went home.
Okay. And I'm just, I mean, for people who don't know, I mean, usually, you come to the ER and they stabilize you, and then they'll call the specialist. And, to me, as a surgical specialist, 3 hours, depending, he could have been in another case. I mean, I would get called to the ER when I was in the middle of the operating room. There's nothing I can do. So it's like, there's things that happen, and I mean, that's why the ERs are there. They can provide the initial care, and that's why it's always open 24/7. So you've got this cardiac cath that goes in, you feel better in the hospital for a couple of days. I'm sure they're feeding you the heart healthy diet, which is more oatmeal probably, and maybe pancakes with syrup or something. I don't know if they tend to give a lot of sugar to heart patients for some crazy reason, I think. So, you recover, you realize you're not dead, which is good. Obviously, you wake up and you're not dead. That's usually a good day. So what do they tell you now? They said, why why did I have the heart attack? I mean, you have a certain amount of blockage and, whatever arteries they were, coronary arteries. How do they tell you to proceed from there?
First of all, I asked them on how did I not die? Because I knew enough about, the LAD artery and blockages and stuff, and that you usually go into cardiac arrest. At least I've had friends that have done that. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how did I not die? And that's when someone mentioned, collateral circulation. So just like one little quick answer. So, okay. So I did a follow-up with the doctor, and of course he was just, I'll never forget, because I was already a little bit aware of some stuff at that point. And I asked him, he wants to put me on statins. I'm like, but statins can have an effect, with your leading to even dementia or things like that, right? Because I know it disrupts a pathway that, provides a lot of stuff, precursors and steroids, whatever. And he's just like, well, would you rather have dementia or a heart attack? Mm-hmm. Basically said that. I'm like, well, I had to think about it. I was like, I'm not sure. Maybe I'd go for the heart attack. But so I left his office thinking, okay, I did take statins for a short amount of time, like 6 months, and I did have effects. And then, but I did a huge amount of research and reading at that point.
You said you had I assume side effects. What kind of issues did you have? Because some people talk about muscle pain. Some people talk about other things that make them not tolerant. Why were you statin intolerant, or what was the problem for you?
I was definitely getting muscle aches and pains that I hadn't had previous. Mm-hmm. And when I finally stopped, they actually went away. So it was, I think, mostly muscle discomfort and pain.
Okay. Yeah. No, mm-hmm. I mean, it's fair enough. I mean, if it's intolerable, it's intolerable. And I think, this is one, and I'm generally, get people off medications as much as possible. But I think that, in the immediate peri-heart attack period of time, the traditional cardiologist will say, yeah, it's all about LDL cholesterol or ApoB, and that's what causes a heart attack. But, you've got all these other factors that are going on, these other risk factors that are going on. There's probably an inflammatory component, metabolic syndrome component. You obviously got the big belly, which is certainly consistent with metabolic syndrome. So while those variables are still very much there, it may make sense to acutely lower the cholesterol for that period of time. But over the long term, it may be a different story. So you have, so you get on the statin. Do they tell you to change your diet? Do they say go on a low-fat diet or anything like that, plant-based, this or that, which is often talked about?
Yeah, actually, well, they did have a dietitian come to my room. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much where that was the only time I really got much advice mm-hmm. on that. And she gave you, the standard stuff about low fat. And actually, she pretty much recommended pretty close to what I had been eating prior to that. And then, the funny thing is, I've seen several cardiologists since, and the first thing I would ask them, kind of put them on the spot, like, what do you think I should eat? And I'd really press them, because I've come to, I think that that's such a crucial part of what happened and how to be healthy. So I wanted to hear some detail from them. And I found, a lot of them would just quote the Michael Pollan, eat plants, most not too much.
Right, yeah.
And that's about it. I mean, that's basically the nutritional advice I got.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, most physicians, including cardiologists, are very, very ignorant when it comes to nutrition. It's just because they just don't study it. And, you talk to, cardiologists in training, and they got, during their grand rounds, are eating donuts and garbage, and they'll just say, diet doesn't even matter, is what they kind of believe, or a lot of them do. And so, interesting. So, obviously this has got to scare you to death. I mean, hell, it's, when our life flashes before our eyes, it definitely, for some people, most people, it encourages them to change things. Now, you weren't a smoker or anything like that. So what did you think you were going to do? You got this advice from the dietitian to kind of continue what you're doing, but maybe do it a little harder, maybe cut out a little more fat. How did you proceed from there?
I kind of went through a lot of different books that I tried to find what books and information that I think made sense. And everything from, I really do like Deep Nutrition by Kate Shanahan. That was a huge one. And that spoke to heart attacks quite a bit.
Let me ask you, so when you get home from the hospital, what are you eating? What are you eating for breakfast the next day? You're at home, you just had a heart attack. Are you eating oatmeal or what are you doing? Are you eating bacon and eggs? I mean, day one out of the hospital.
I wasn't quite to the bacon and eggs yet, but it wasn't long after that. But I probably was still eating oatmeal and stuff like that for a little bit, but no sugars and,
Okay. So, I mean, because you're scared. I mean, hell, you just had a heart attack. You got to be like, what the hell am I going to do here? You're afraid, afraid to eat anything, I can imagine. And so, this is prior to this, you probably never heard of a carnivore diet. I mean, it probably wasn't on your radar. How did you go from I just had a heart attack to thinking that I'm going to eat a bunch of meat is a good idea? I mean, where did that come in?
Just being a voracious reader and reading with at that point, I was open to anything. I would have, if I needed to be a hardcore vegan, I would have done it. Whatever I believed was correct, I would have, taken that advice. So I had no bias at that point. But the more I read, I did just gravitate towards a largely meat-based diet and not being afraid of saturated fat. Once I read the history too, like the Big Fat Surprise, I read that and then everyone kept talking about how it came to be that we had the food pyramid and stuff. I'm like, there was just such an overwhelming amount of good information with stuff to back it up that I was starting to believe that very much. And that kind of just naturally brought me to the carnivore. Okay. Eventually.
So you said the heart attack was 2016, I believe you said?
Yeah.
So that's almost 7 years ago. So you were 51 at the time. So you're about 56, 57 now?
57,
57, okay. And so did you lose some cardiac function? Was your ejection fraction down? Was there any wall damage? Did they assess you with what your cardiac function was, your stress echoes or things like that?
I was so lucky that at first it said maybe 5% damage. I think there's a little thickening of the left ventricle, but I ended up doing a stress echo because I do Spartan races, like obstacle races. And I train high intensity is kind of what I like to do.
Were you doing this before the heart attack or is this only subsequent to?
No, before. I think that's probably what I believe what really helped me get through it. With
okay, so you'd been fit doing Spartan exercises, eating oatmeal and frying your meat up or frying your tacos in corn oil and still had a little bit of a belly and then had a heart attack. Okay, so fair enough. And so you're already relatively fit. So you kind of sound like you're doing mostly what you're supposed to do. Didn't have a lot of damage, thankfully. So at what point did you start changing your diet and when did you start on a carnivore diet?
I think it was probably just a matter of a few months post heart attack when I definitely started making the switch
to carnivore.
And for sure, like eggs and steaks. Like at one point, I just decided, you know what? Based on the feedback I got from the doctors, and I realized they don't really get the nutritional training. What I read, I'm like, I just made a leap. Like I'm going to go for this. I believe this is correct. And it only took a few months probably to start shifting over. And
because I mean, you were a relatively early adopter because, when I started doing a carnivore diet in 2016, which is kind of around the time when you had your heart attack and, went on Rogan's podcast in 2017. So a lot of people hadn't heard about it yet. I mean, there was a smaller group doing it on Facebook called Zeroing In on Health. Where did you hear about the carnivore diet?
I do remember reading Paul Saladino's book at one point. I think I saw his before I came into yours, but I also knew the whole story of Timothy Noakes and how he just one tweet led to years of legal problems, because I think he recommended cream or something to a pregnant woman, something like that. And so it was kind of a collection of a lot of the sources weren't necessarily 100% carnivore, but they were advocating, red meat and things like that. And eggs are fine and cholesterol is not bad. So I think I was first on the, cholesterol is really not, or, cholesterol in food or saturated fat, I should say, in food is really not bad as long as it's, animal-based saturated fat and not something that was bombarded with hydrogen ions, to create saturated fat. And I totally got into that, like the idiosyncrasies of like, saturated fat can be a lot of different things. And what is our body used to? And then it's like, yeah, that does make sense that we, historically would be eating us that way predominantly. Then I found out about the, I forget his name, starts with the V, that lived with the Eskimos.
Well, Vilmar Stefansson.
Yeah,
Right.
they even got his book. And yeah, and then by the time carnivore actually became a bigger thing, I was totally on board. I mean, I don't think I'm like the Petersons, where if I eat certain vegetables, a lot of really bad things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did get autoimmune disease, which alopecia is,
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, kind of more, gosh, maybe I should just get more strict, and so I get my hair back, and then I can reintroduce some stuff. And
we'll talk. We'll talk about the alopecia areata in a minute, but I want to just finish this heart attack stuff. And so you got, you decided to go carnivore within, or carnivore-ish within a few months after having the heart attack. Is a cardiologist aware of this? Are you doing follow-ups with the cardiologist? Did you mention that to them? Are they thinking that, or did you just not let them know about that?
I basically had to go through a couple cardiologists. Mm-hmm. Actually, they were not liking that, mm-hmm. but whatever they had to counter was minimal. They're just kind of doing the usual line. I did find a really good cardiologist in Newport Beach, kind of a high-end guy, but he in fact, he told me, you're the kind of guy that cardiologists are going to hate. He literally told me that, but he understood what I was doing and kind of supported it. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, I'm like, I guess I don't really need a cardiologist. Why do I need to spend a bunch of money to go? I could get checkups occasionally, but it's kind of like the whole journey's led me to trust the people that are, that are writing books like yourself and other people. Like, I think that's the good advice. So I could follow that on my own. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I think it's working out.
As someone who writes these books, I still tell people to verify these. You want to make sure what you're doing is actually working. And so, it's safe to say you have not had any more symptoms of heart disease or chest pain or any subsequent events since that time. Is that true or no?
That's correct. And I work out kind of like CrossFit style all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm pushing myself and everything. It's been fine.
Your heart's been pumping along pretty well. Blood pressure normal and all that type of stuff. Were you able to lose that extra belly that you had?
Somewhat. I still need to, because I think I've been in metabolic syndrome for mm-hmm. years. Mm-hmm. And I have to be extremely strict. And there's times I'm not as strict as others. So I really need to work on that. But it does trend in a good way the stricter I get.
And so when you say you do strict, what does your diet look like? And then when you're not so strict, what does your diet look like?
I think, like, most of the time I'll either get some steaks or patties, like 100%, like getting like from New Zealand, 100% grass fed. Mm-hmm. I found a source for that. Definitely eggs. So meat and eggs are the staple. I still cave into a beer every once in a while. And then when I do that, that can lead to eating something else. That's kind of the problem with, that. It's like it snowballs into other stuff. So occasional slip ups, but on a daily basis, I'm doing pretty well.
What about your wife? She found you when you're having your heart attack, was asking what's going on, obviously, with you. And then, a couple of months, you're eating steaks and eggs. She's got to be thinking, what the hell's going on? Are you going to kill yourself? How did she react to you doing this, or was she pretty much on board?
It's funny. She's from Holland originally, and they have plenty of saturated fat, sure. Whole milk, and she's big on whole milk, and mm-hmm. she's very healthy. I think she grew up eating good food, so she understands. She loves a good steak, actually. So it was like not a hard sell at all.
Okay. Well, that's nice to get somebody supporting you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the alopecia areata. So this is, like you said, it's a patchy loss of your hair. It's autoimmune. Some people where it just half your hair is missing and clumps on your head. and then also in your beard. How did that evolve? Did that happen right after the heart attack, or was there something else that was a trigger, you think?
No, it was like, it's funny. It actually, the little patches had been happening for probably a decade or longer.
Okay, so maybe you
but
had
they were
it, right?
pretty, yeah, they're pretty minor. They would go away. All of a sudden, I'm like, God, I have a really smooth spot on my chin. What's going on? It wasn't until all of a sudden it kind of just kicked into another gear, and it's just like, wow, it's starting to hit my everywhere. And I got to the point, I had a little bit of hair, but it looked like I had mange. I had to just shave my head. Too many patches.
Okay. And at any point, did you see a physician about this? Was there ever any thought, hey, doc, my hair's falling out in clumps? Was that ever looked at?
Oh, wow. I saw a bunch, and then dermatologists,
Right.
and I would get shots, extremely painful, like, and often I'd have to get a bunch of these steroid shots, and it would, a little bit would grow back. I'm like, this is not worth it. It's like, as soon as I miss a month, it's already going away. And then they even tried hyaluronic acid dilutions to kind of like put that on certain spots, and it's like, I'm just going to have to be bald.
Interesting. So when you're going to the dermatologist and they're injecting your areas with corticosteroids and putting hyaluronic acid lotions or creams or whatever on the spots, did they ever suggest a dietary shift? Was there ever any consideration about diet during those discussions?
I don't think so. I don't remember a single time where they just started talking about what I was eating.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not surprised. I mean, most people don't consider nutrition as a concern for autoimmune disease, whereas in my opinion, it's got a lot to do with it. In fact, maybe completely causative for that. So when did you see a change in that, relative to changing your diet, I suppose?
I'm trying to think of the timeline. I know that because this is quite a bit after the heart attack, more recent. A couple of years ago, at least, I was, I started looking into all the diets, where they just abolish everything, but whatever. And I think it was probably the Petersons, watching some of their podcasts, Michaela. She had a host of problems, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should try an elimination diet, and it made sense, with meat. And that's pretty much what I did, and it just started trending. All of a sudden, like, wow, I'm getting some hair back, and it kind of trended in the right direction. I still have a ways to go, but it's getting, I'm approaching 60, so I'm not going to have a whole lot of hair anyways, probably on my head, but all the patches have filled in. The receding part is normal, but the patches on top of my head are filled in, which is great.
Yeah. That's gotta be, not just a fact from the cosmetic appearance, but also just because you got a disease and you're like, I don't want to have a disease.
It leads to other things I understand too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, a lot of one autoimmune is often associated with many other immune issues. And so, and I think it's because of the common etiology of probably gut pathology. And so people that have one thing will have thyroid issues and they'll have all these other issues that continue to go on. You said your cholesterol prior to Carnivore was elevated, but they never sort of push you to take a statin. What is it doing now? Did it go up even higher, or where is it at these days?
No, it's pretty much the same, in the same being, to get my numbers here. It's not like outrageously high. It's definitely over what they consider to be good. But my triglycerides and HDL have gotten a better ratio.
Yeah. Okay.
I know when I'm slipping up because my triglycerides will definitely jump back up to say 150. They don't get in the 200s anymore, but I'd prefer to get it under 100. I've been, I know I can do it but I have to be pretty diligent to do so.
And kind of like me, my cholesterol didn't really change on Carnivore. It was always kind of slightly high, and it stayed there. It's just interesting how some people will shoot up, some people it actually go down. Many people, it kind of stays in a kind of the same range, slightly high. Now, as someone who's had a heart attack, they would, many cardiologists would want you to have an LDL cholesterol certainly below 70, and maybe some would even advocate for below 50. That's not going to be the case probably on this diet. I mean, are you still on medication? 'Cause a lot of times heart attacks, with stents and they're on some kind of blood thinner, I mean, obviously a statin, anything else? Are you on any medications now?
No, I mean, I pretty much, the blood thinner only lasted about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that one would really affect me, especially if I went to altitude. I was breathless. Once I stopped that got much better. I pushed them to whatever doctor I was seeing, like, when can I get off this? But I try not to be Mr. Know-it-all, and it's kind of like a fine line, like deciding for yourself what to do and taking advice, but realizing there's a lot of bad advice out there. So I was always struggling that. So, but I got off everything except I kind of still take the baby aspirin, not every day. I'm struggling with that now too, but I guess I'll probably continue that for a while.
Your athletic performance now, I mean, because you said you were doing, I guess, some sort of endurance activities, triathlons or something like that, or I can't remember, or obstacle races. How does that compare now on a meat-based diet versus previously, previous to heart attack, I suppose?
Well, I'm definitely pretty strong. I mean, I've fortunately had injuries. I have like rotator cuff torn completely off on my right shoulder. So I'm like, getting old is hit me, but I'm still actually doing pretty good. And I'm kind of gravitating towards more CrossFit type of stuff, being careful of my age though, to not like throw out my back or something. But yeah, I feel pretty good I feel, strong. I don't feel like I did when I was 20, but I feel pretty good. I think the muscles are solid, and in general, that makes me feel pretty healthy.
Yeah, there's a question somebody asked about, did you have a coronary artery calcium scan before or after your heart attack? Was it ever, did you have any idea that your arteries were clogged up at any point?
No, I never did get that. And I'm still wondering if I could get that with the stents in it post, but I haven't done, pre or post actually.
Okay. Yeah, I think there might be some artifact, that's thrown on the CT scan, but I think they can correct for that with the software. I wouldn't swear to that, but I think I've heard people getting a CAC status post a stent in there. Do you have any, outside of, your hair growing back and, you're recovering from the heart attack, any other benefits you've noticed from changing your diet, mental cognition, anything, skin health, anything else?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. That's actually, for one, I used to crash incredibly hard at 3:00 every day. I mean, actually, I didn't even mention that I was probably eating like a Snickers bar or something like that to get over that crash. I don't crash at all. In fact, I almost never eat breakfast because I don't feel like I need to. I mean, literally. So the energy level of just being maintained at a nice workable level has been fantastic. I think that's a huge benefit that I noticed. And another thing that I noticed, I always had on my elbow like a really patchy, scaly thing that it was almost always there. It's pretty smooth right now, and the more I stick with like a meat only, it gets completely smooth. So those are two other things I've definitely have noticed.
How about digestive health? I mean, is that, because some people still think, well, you're never going to have a bowel movement. You're always going to be constipated on carnivore. Has that been an issue for you?
No, in fact, when I do, like occasionally, I think I had lasagna not too long ago, because I love lasagna, and I slipped and I had some, I say slipped. It's like, whatever. I had some lasagna. Not to get into details, but you wouldn't want to be around me for, after the 12 hours after eating that. I was like, wow, it's like I'm passing wind again. I haven't done that. I actually haven't done that in a long time. And it's like, so yeah, I think maybe it's a microbiome or whatever. I'm pretty suited to eating steaks and eggs, and it feels fine. If I deviate from that, that's when, things can kind of happen.
Yeah. A lot of people notice that. And one of the things is most people find is their gut health is so much better. They don't have a lot of gas, and they're not farting all the time when they go carnivore, because you're just not producing all the fermentation gases that occur with carbohydrates, and fiber and things like that. So, you said your wife was very healthy. She's from Holland, big fan of dairy and fat and things like that. Has she upped her meat consumption since you've been doing that? Because you guys probably eat together, I would imagine.
I mean, she always did eat a lot of meat, but she's more than happy. And I'm really kind of very happy because I have 3 grown children and 2 of them are still here with me. And they, especially the boys, I have 2 boys, they are big meat eaters too. They are super healthy. I mean, I just see them. I'm like, God, I'm doing you a favor by, learning from my mistakes, because I think they're thriving just completely. And they really like, they enjoy a really good steak. It's nice to see.
Yeah, they're normal human beings. So.
Yeah,
They're
allowed to.
Good for them. Good for you. Have you had any negatives that have occurred to you since switching up to a more meat-based diet?
I don't think so, because if I did, it'd be hard to pinpoint, because the positives so outweigh the negatives. Even the costs. I mean, obviously eggs and meat, and I'm trying to get I even go as far as get the chickens that aren't fed the corn and soy and they're pasture raised and all. I mean, it's definitely a lot of money, but then I actually don't need to eat kind of as much. That's one thing I thought was interesting. I don't have to eat that much. Maybe I should eat more, but I get satiated pretty quick. Like I see a lot of people eating well over a pound of meat, a couple pounds, whatever. I can't really get anywhere near that for myself, seems.
And you said, I can't remember what you said, you were up around 230, did you say at one point? 230
Yeah.
pounds? And where are you at today?
About 215 right now, but I'd really like to get down to 190 or even below that is my goal.
Yeah, so probably beer and lasagna is, maybe not conducive to that. We'll see how things go. Do you have anybody that, outside, you're no longer seeing the cardiologist? Are you still seeing a family practice or general practitioner from time to time for checkups?
Actually, my long-term doctor recently retired. He's still part of a group. I could go in the group, but I kind of was in the habit of just asking him for certain tests every year. And that's the main extent of, because actually that's another thing. I've been pretty darn healthy as far as getting sick. So yeah, so now that he's retired, I either should, connect with another doctor or not. But at least I know if I get sick, I have a PPO. I can go anywhere. I can go to the groups. I do have, medical. I have somewhere to go if I'm actually sick. But I haven't been seeing anyone recently. Just kind of like checkups.
And maybe you haven't felt you needed to. I mean, you feel pretty good, I guess. Is that right?
I mean, again, I don't want to be coming off as a know-it-all, but I'd have the same conversation with him all the time. He was a good guy, and he was pretty open-minded, but he would still, the statins guy, and then there's a new thing, the PK, whatever, that lowers the
PCSK9 inhibitor. Yeah.
Yeah. He started talking about those. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do it. But we got along great, and he would pretty much, order the tests I need. So I probably should find another person to do that now.
Has anybody outside of physicians being concerned about your health? I mean, is there anybody that you run into that has problems with the way you eat? Like, I don't know if you work, if you have a job you go to or you eat like that, or does anybody notice this and say, what the hell are you doing and why are you doing this? And it's bad for you and that type of stuff.
I work from home, so I'm good there, but I do, just going to the gym. Like I've gone to a couple of different gyms, and they're pretty involved gyms. It's not just you show up, there's actually classes, and they want to try to coach you in various things. So when it gets to nutrition, well, I guess the biggest problem they don't, not so much lack of grains or anything like that, but they're like, you need vegetables. I'm like, I'm not so sure I do, but I'll take that as their advisement. And then if I tell them what I'm like, sometimes I'll eat once or twice a day, and it's largely meat. They definitely, okay. It's like, I can see they're just, I got to work with this guy. But then I hit them with a bunch of information that they probably don't accept, but it's like, they realize that I'm passionate about what I believe in. So they kind of let it go at that point.
And this is at the CrossFit gym, I guess?
Yeah. I had an obstacle racing gym, and now I'm doing a sort of a CrossFit type of gym.
Yeah, and CrossFit has had at one point, was very much a paleo type of thing, and they've I think they're still, at least they care about nutrition, which I'll give them credits for that, and I think they generally do much better than the average American diet. And obviously, the average person who going to CrossFit is going to be in better condition than the average American by far.
Yeah.
Well, that's how do you feel from it? You said you had shoulder pain from a rotator cuff injury, cuff tear, full thickness tear. How long have you had that, and how do you feel overall with your joints and stuff like that since changing diet?
Yeah, actually, I mean, the shoulder thing was over a lifetime. I had injured it, and now two of the four rotator cuff muscles are completely torn off, literally.
Mm-hmm.
The ortho guy said, it's some people can hardly raise their arm. So I've always done a lot of stuff, and I guess it probably other muscles have compensated.
Right.
So and thank God I can still play tennis, because I love tennis. I can still serve. So my quality of life is not too affected. But one thing is interesting. I used to have a sore right knee all the time, and I went to an ortho probably a couple of times, and they wanted to scope it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a little nervous about that. I actually hasn't been bothering me at all lately. So the one joint was a problem for years is pretty much not a problem right now. And it's probably because of the diet.
Yeah, I would certainly say that's possible, because I see it, very commonly. And you're right. There are people with rotator cuff tears, and probably supraspinatus, infraspinatus are most commonly the ones that are torn, I would imagine, for you, but it might be one of the other two. But there's some people where it's extremely painful and limiting, and you're right, they can't lift their shoulder above here. Whereas you're saying you're able to actually serve a tennis racket, and that the same arm which has the cuff.
Yeah,
well,
that's my right.
That's pretty good function. I don't know that I would be too excited to mess with that as a surgeon. There's one of those things where first do no harm, and if you're already doing pretty good, you're not going to make it much better, and you could potentially make it worse. So. Good for you for doing that. How much how much are you eating a day? Just because you said you don't have a big appetite, you can't eat, like I can sit down and eat 3 or 4 pounds of steak, no problem. It's very easy for me to do that. But how much are you eating a day?
For example, yesterday I bought these patties, and they're a third pound each. Mm-hmm. So I ate one of those. I have a hard time even eating 2 of those at one sitting. And if I buy a steak, I usually don't go more than like 10 ounces max for a steak, and I'm full. And then I'm also like, I got this full fat Greek yogurt with nothing added. Mm-hmm. That's really creamy and delicious. So I might have that with the meat, and that I'm stuffed with that. And like later in the day, even though I work out, I probably only need, a kind of a smaller portion than even that. And that'll do me.
Were you always had a relatively small appetite, or is this new since you've gone on a meat-based diet? I mean, is this something, because I mean, the amount of food you're describing wouldn't even get me, 2 hours into my day. I mean, I think,
yeah.
But I'm just thinking, is this new? Is this a relatively new phenomenon that the appetite has been suppressed?
I mean, I know I am puzzled by it. I think it kind of is, at least in the meat part. But the thing is, I mean, I grew up eating terribly. Mm-hmm. I was luckily very athletic and lean most of my childhood and into my 20s, but I ate horribly, and I would eat a lot of hamburgers and fries. I mean, I was a fast food guy. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a little bit hard to compare, more meat compared to all these other things, because I would get hungry, being carbs. Every couple hours, I would actually get hungry. So I was definitely probably eating more, but it's more like light breads and rices and things like that. I find that like a good piece of meat, like a ribeye or something, it doesn't take much, and I'm done. Kind of interesting.
One of the criticisms of this diet, which I think is unfounded, because, if you look at, well, I mean, how affordable or unaffordable is this? Obviously it's affordable, you wouldn't be doing it, but I mean, how much do you find you're spending on food now versus maybe in times past?
Maybe not as much more as I thought I was, because if you are doing a lot of fast food or eating out, you're going to be spending, it's not a good value unless you're just getting like Taco Bell tacos or something. But it's like, fast food has gone up enough to where if I get a good piece of meat and some eggs, I don't think I'm really spending more because I don't eat a whole lot of it and I'm good. Unfortunately, I did get a hold of the Wagyu stuff and I'm like, yeah, I like this. Mm-hmm. And that stuff is crazy expensive. So maybe I should be careful, refining my taste too much. But yeah, I think it's not hugely noticeable. It might be, but I haven't really tracked it too much.
Yeah, I was just actually pulling stats on this morning. So the average American spends about $20 a day on food, about 11 in the grocery store, and 9 going out to eat when you add it up throughout the month. And so I also pulled the stats. The average retail price for a pound of ground beef right now is $4.78. That's average across the nation. A New York strip steak choice grade is about $8.99 to $9.99 a pound, average retail price across the nation. And a dozen eggs is $4.21. So I mean, you get that's 2,700 calories of high quality nutrition for under $20, which is cheaper than the average American spends. So it can be very affordable for most people. And eating a pound of ground beef, a New York strip, and a dozen eggs a day is a lot of food for a lot of people. I mean, that's and a lot of high quality nutrition, very high quality protein and fat. So it's definitely, I think, doable. Do you share any of this stuff on social media at all? Are you a social media guy?
Not so much. Probably because, well, I mean, most of my social media, I'm still mostly Facebook. I do have Instagram too, but I rarely post, and it's more just for connecting with my friends and family as opposed to like influencing anybody.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and then if I do post something like that, I usually get no replies. So I keep it to like, fun events.
Got it. Okay.
What my kids are doing.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, anything else that we didn't get to share? We're getting close on our time here. So anything else you want to say?
I mean, I think the most important thing is seek the truth. I mean, I definitely don't want to be gung ho on anything like in a camp or not, but I want to continuously seek the truth. And I urge people not only to explore meat and stuff, but kind of learn the history of how we got to where we are as far as the food pyramid and look into there's a lot of good people out there that went through a lot of hell because of having a different opinion. And it's striking, really. It's kind of like all people are trying to do is be healthy, and we should have a pretty clear path to that information. And I don't think we have. And I don't think if you kind of go along with this line of thinking like meat, it's not necessarily that you're a nut or you're crazy. It's like you've come to that conclusion after finding some really good information and seeing what it does to your body. So I would just encourage people to learn the history and just keep it up. Do what works for you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good advice. And yeah, certainly, I think that's all, most of us are just trying to get people to be healthier. And, if you disagree with someone else, that's fine. I mean, I don't care. I mean, but people should be allowed to try what they want. All right. Well, thank you very much, Guy. I appreciate this. We have another one of these at 2 p.m. today, guys. If you're interested, we have Robin Schweitzer, who is the principal at KetoCons. He's going to be talking about, I guess, organizing that for anybody that cares. So that's at 2 p.m. today. Thank you very much, Guy. Have a great one, and continued good luck with your journey, and keep pushing hard. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much. It was a really pleasure talking to you.
All right. Bye-bye, guys. We'll see you guys later.
Right.
Bye-bye. Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.